welcome once again to our Government at Work program. It's another wonderful Thursday evening here on the island of Nevis, and it's a time when we all look forward to a night filled with information as it pertains to the continued good governance of the CCM-led Nevis Island Administration. I, for one, look forward each week to go deep into discussions with the ministers of government, the permanent secretaries, the special advisors, the department heads, as well as top officials from the various statutory corporations to ensure that you, our listeners and viewers to this program, are given as much truthful information as possible, especially in times like these when some has quite obviously set out to mislead. We also make every effort to keep the discussion as frank and as honest as possible so that listeners and viewers to this program will get a true reflection of what's happening here in the land that we all call home. I remind you that this program is being brought to you by the CCM-led Nevis Island Administration and hosted by yours truly, Keith Scarborough. It's a program designed to inform and educate all citizens and residents at home and abroad of the many positive developments that are taking place here on the island of Nevis. This program is broadcast live on VON Radio every Thursday evening from 8 to 9:30 p.m. Then we broadcast on Nevis Television on Sunday evening from 8:30 p.m. This program can also be seen on Facebook and YouTube shortly thereafter. We shall take a short break, and when I return, I shall introduce my guests for this evening's program to you. So stay locked on to the powerhouse of the Eastern Caribbean, VON Radio 860 AM.
So rise, St. Thomas is right, St. James is put together and build your land. Rise, St. George's and St. Paul's together with St. John's. This land is enough for all to share. No reason to leave and go nowhere. Foreigners can come here from America and England. There is something mighty sweet about my land. And if the foreigners who live here can insist that it's here they're from, then I swear I'll never leave my native land. One people, one country.
Welcome back. Folks, this evening I am pleased to have as my guest Mr. Brian Dyer, Director of the Nevis Disaster Preparedness Unit, and we shall be taking a look at Hurricane Melissa and its devastating effect on the country of Jamaica and other countries in the Caribbean. But before we get into those discussions, Mr. Dyer, I must ask you to give us an update on your most recent trip abroad, because I understand that you returned just last week from a trip abroad. So could you enlighten us a little as to where you traveled to and the purpose of that trip?
All right, good evening, listening audience. This is Brian Dyer, Director of the Nevis Disaster Management Department. Yes, the Nevis Disaster Management Department, the National Emergency Management Agency, and the St. Kitts and Nevis Coast Guard, we journeyed to Statia for the Statia annual oil spill workshop and training. We traveled on the 12th, the same day of the workshop, and we participated in the workshop activities, and we learned of the technologies that is being used on the island of Statia and Saba and the other Dutch islands with regards to managing oil spills and response to emergencies at sea, and also the preservation of their Dyer sites from the oil spills. And we also had a chance to witness the launch of the brand spanking new search and rescue vessel, which cost them over 700,000 euros. And this vessel is to enhance the safety at sea with regards to emergency responses by the Central Stations government. On the last day, Thursday, we participated in the training where the St. Kitts and Nevis delegation had hands-on training in launching the oil booms that would be used in the event of oil spill to get the oil from the ocean. We participated in the deploying and removal or retrieval of the boom from the ocean, And we also saw the skimmers in action as well, how they remove the oil from the top of the water and have it containerized for recycling. So it was a worthwhile experience in Statia. We have invited them to St. Nevis for the first quarter of 2026, where we will start the initial discussions for forming a memorandum of understanding between both the Dutch islands and St. Nevis, as we share we share the border. So it is useful to have the expertise in the event of any oil spill here in St. Nevis. So we want to start the discussion for the memorandum of understanding between countries.
Okay, great. Thanks for that update on your travels. Now, Mr. Dyer, we are nearing the official end of the 2025 hurricane season. Thank God for that. The season, as we know, is scheduled to end on November 30th, just a mere 10 days away from now. The Atlantic Ocean, meanwhile, is quiet as we speak, and we hope that it remains that way, because I can recall that Hurricane Lenny hit us late November 1999, so we are not yet out of the woods. So let us keep praying. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I want to focus this evening on Hurricane Melissa and the damage it caused to the country of Jamaica in particular, and the lessons we could all learn from that unfortunate disaster. You have been in the disaster preparedness business for a long time. Have you ever seen or heard of a Category 5 storm making landfall at 175 miles per hour?
I have been at the department for 15 years, 5 years as project officer and 10 years as director. Mm-hmm. There have been a few storms that have impacted islands with 175 miles an hour winds. Mm-hmm. On record, Melissa is the second strongest hurricane to impact an island. Mm-hmm. The first being Hurricane Allen back in 1980, mm-hmm. who had winds up to 190.
Really?
Melissa had winds up to 185 miles an hour.
Which country did Allen hit?
It impacted the U.S.
Oh, the U.S.
Yeah.
I was talking about the Caribbean.
Yeah. But it was
normally build up as they get to the U.S.
It was an Atlantic storm.
Yes, right? Yes. It started down here, but by the time you get to...
But Melissa is in the top 4.
Right.
Usually, hurricanes are categorized by the strong winds and the pressure, right? So, with regards to winds, Melissa is number 2, and for the decrease in pressure, it's within the top 4.
Okay. Devastating storm. Now, a mandatory call went out to persons living in those low-lying areas and to persons directly in the path of the storm, and some persons refused to leave. Could the authorities have made them leave?
I am not au fait with the emergency rules or laws on the island of Jamaica.
What about here? Let's say
here, if it was here, also we don't have that authority to remove persons forcibly from their homes, even though we see the impending danger. We can warn them, yes, but after warning them several times, then the onus is on them to protect their life and property. But we will make a concerted effort to encourage them, to remove themselves. We have done walkthroughs in some of the villages and streets here on Nevis. We have taken the annual premier in some instances in the past. We have taken police officers. We have taken friendly faces, some nurses who would usually attend for these persons. So, it's just to encourage them to move. You see the danger coming, you would reach out to them. If the authorities can't move, then you look at a friendly face or some family member who can encourage them to move. If all hell's, they still refuse to move, then the onus is on them to protect themselves and property.
So no charges or anything like that could be brought against them?
Unless our emergency laws are strengthened to reflect that, then we can't do anything but just to give them verbal warning.
So why call it mandatory then?
Yeah, well.
Because it's a mandatory.
Yeah, because the authorities have a limit, because the persons who are in the mode for rescue, they are families too.
Right.
So the authorities give them enough time to go on effect rescues. So after that cutoff time, then the individual in the path of danger, they're on their own. Same thing like when we have volcanic eruptions, Mount St. Helen, persons are one, and they refuse to move. Same thing in Montserrat, persons still find a way back into the exclusion zone to do their farming and they perish. So, you can warn and encourage, and unless the laws are changed to forcibly remove persons in handcuff and that kind of thing, there's nothing else we can do but just to encourage them.
Okay. I asked the question because we would have heard of some deaths occurring during and after the storm would have passed, and I'm certain that some of those deaths took place in some of those same areas where the mandatory evacuation notice went out. In a case like that, does the government bear any responsibility at all for the burial of those persons saying that they were warned but refused to take heed?
Sometimes we may still have to bear the cost of a burial, especially if there's if they don't have any family members left, or if there's a mass burial and we may try to reduce the spread of diseases, we may get involved and do a quick burial, and the government will absorb the cost.
Okay. Even though they refuse to move.
Even though they refuse, yeah.
Okay. Now, in refusing to move, what are some of the consequences and repercussions that those persons would naturally face from a storm such as that?
Well, apart from the destruction of property, some may lose their life. We have had the same instances in Bahamas a few years ago, in Hurricane Joaquin, where persons refused to move. The military showed up to their homes, provided them with, T-111 to protect their windows, etc. And some of them refused to move. When the storm surge hit, and even though they were on the second floor in their homes, water was so high that some of them ended up with water just below their neck. And the following year, they did not want anybody to come and tell them anything. The experience was so horrible and horrific that they heeded the advice after, So sometimes a person may just want to experience some of the dangers before they take heed, because, human nature really,
Adventurous.
Very adventurous, yeah.
Okay. Now, we all would have seen the damages coming out of one particular area in Jamaica called Black River. The destruction that took place in that area is frightening. I saw several areas where it was difficult for any vehicle to get to some persons who were without water, food, shelter, clothing, etc. I literally saw a road split in two, so the only way to get to those people was on foot. What would have been our recourse if that were to happen here in Nevis, where there was no way to get to a particular community for days after a storm? What would be our recourse here?
Right. In Nevis, we have some flood-prone areas, such as Pond Hill, Lower Bath, Stony Grove, the Cades Bay, Lower Cotton Ground, to Cades Bay, Newcastle. Those are our prime flood-prone areas. If these areas are cut off, we have a road network that you can get to some areas by using secondary roads. But if those two are impacted, then we may have to access these areas by the sea after the sea cools down a bit. If not, then we would have to rely on helicopter operations to get supplies to these persons. And this would come through the regional response mechanism, with the Caribbean Disaster Management Agency. We have to rely on helicopter operations to get access to these areas.
Okay, and we do have access to things like that?
We have access to the regional response mechanism through CDMA.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I observed that some of the shelters that were provided were themselves severely damaged by the hurricane. Is there ever a plan B put in place in case any of our shelters get destroyed during a storm? And how will you get persons from one place to the other in a case like that?
On Nevis, we have 10. We operate 10 shelters. Right. Of the 10, only 2 are specifically made for shelter operations. So these facilities would become our long-term shelters. Unfortunately, they can only hold a maximum of 200 persons. If we go above the 200 persons that need shelters, then we will have to use makeshift buildings. And facing a Category 5, we will see extensive damage across the island. I know I've come here on several occasions and say Category 1 and 2 and up to 3, I'm not worried. But Category 4 and 5, you have to be worried, because that's only the sustained winds. You still have gusts to deal with, and sometimes in the eye of the hurricanes you have tornadoes that can even increase your wind speed even further in small areas. So any island would receive catastrophic damage for a Category 5. So the onus on us is to do an assessment of what survives the impact and then make a determination of what can be used as shelters. We do encourage persons to use the body system, stay with a family or friend until the government can chip in and provide alternate shelter. On a worst case scenario, you may have to reach out to the United Nations and operate some tent cities, just to accommodate the persons who may be severely impacted and are homeless. Those are the worst case scenarios we may face here in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Okay. Now you say we have 2 basically designated shelters that are long-term shelters.
Yes.
Which 2 are these?
These are the Pond Hill Community Center and the Charles Walters Community Center in Hanley's Road. Yes.
Okay. Now, technology plays a major role in all aspects of our human life, but you need electricity in most cases to operate smoothly. The electrical supply was almost non-existent in the most parts of Jamaica. As a result, some persons could not get their phone charged to notify their loved ones that they were alive and well. Persons were unable to get any money from their bank account, and even if they could, they wouldn't have been able to purchase anything because all of the businesses in Black River was destroyed by Hurricane Melissa. If such a tragedy ever happened here in Nevis, what do you recommend persons do in those circumstances where they found themselves practically isolated from the rest of the island without financing, food, drink, water?
Okay, part of the public awareness campaign that we do at the office is to ensure that persons or family members would have an emergency plan.
Right.
And part of the emergency kit would be a first aid kit and also clothing to last a minimum of 3 days. You should also have some cash readily available that is a part of your kit, because you never know what will happen after the storm. So for those persons who did not heed, they wanted to have some cash available, the onus was on them to take heed. The Red Cross also accessed some funding and issued some funds to assist persons in preparation for the impact of the hurricane. That funding is being encouraged by also the United Nations. We met with them sometime in July, if my memory serves correct, and they have a program that we are encouraged to have the procedures outlined in our disaster plan to accommodate pre-disaster financing to assist persons in buying food and shelter, like tarpaulins and nails and screws, etc., prior to the impact of a hurricane. So these are some initiatives we are looking to implement come 2026 to bolster the preparatory actions for persons in the community. But the onus is on the individual to protect their home as far as practicable, Yes, the physical planning does a robust job in going around inspecting homes. However, some homes, because of poverty, may not be maintained as well. So there is an element of risk. So meeting persons' need by providing the cash impetus to help them to secure food and some roofing materials prior to the impact of the storm, that's the way we are looking at for 2026 and beyond.
But you say helping them to store cash and food, but with a Category 5, the whole house gone. Everything gone, like we see in Jamaica. So we have to remember that we are talking about a Cat 5 at 175. I mean, what we see coming from Jamaica is, yes, you try to help prior to, but the power of that storm took away most everything from quite a few persons. So it's in that context I'm looking at the bigger picture, so to speak. Because like you say, we could take a 1 and a 2 and maybe even a 3, but a 4 and a 5 is really destructive.
Yeah.
All right. Now, it is difficult for any country to prepare themselves against such storm. But having witnessed Hurricane Melissa, what are some of the takeaways that you, as the Director of Disaster Preparedness here in Nevis, would have observed? And how you suggest the Nevis Island Administration, in the first instance, and the people of Nevis prepare themselves going forward? And we're talking Cat 5 here, not just regular hurricane. How do you suggest?
There's a long list of takeaways. I can mention just a couple. With regards to legislation, the disaster management legislation here in St. Kitts and Nevis is not robust enough for a major response. Right? We conducted an assessment back in 2022, and several recommendations were made with regards to enhancing the disaster management framework in St. Kitts and Nevis. Several of those recommendations have not been acted upon. We have since done some revisions to the Federal Emergency Response Plan and the Nevis Disaster Management Response Plan. The federal, outside of that, the Federal Response Plan was updated in 2013. The Nevis Disaster Plan was last updated in 2017. We have done some work to revise the Nevis Disaster Plan and the Federal Disaster Plan all in this year. But since the meeting with the United Nations agencies, even though we did some revision in 2025, we still find ourselves short. You know, we still have to go back to the drawing board and do continuous amendment. The legislation for St. Kitts and Nevis was last changed or revised in 2020. 5 years on, we still lacking some major components that should be included in the legislation. So there's work to be done legislatively. There's work to be done in formalizing memorandum of understanding between the stakeholders, and especially between the disaster offices and the business community. There are no formal memorandum of understanding between those entities. The public awareness need to be strengthened. We need to see the businesses, they need to have business continuity plans. They need to have emergency response plans. This is not mandatory. You know, we did a survey a few years back, and alarmingly, over 90% of the businesses here in Nevis did not have an emergency response plan, a business continuity plan. We have since run 3 business continuity planning workshops, and we continue to advocate for businesses to have continuity plans. But we have seen the uptake is slow. We're hoping to see better results 2026 and beyond. We have advocated to the government, both local and federal, that the renewal of businesses should be tied to their evidence to show that they have a business continuity plan, an emergency response plan, and also test these plans. You know, they should have drills, right? That has not been supported by legislation, so we can only make recommendations going forward. You know, the issue of volunteers, we still do not have any legislation for volunteer or volunteerism in the Federation. We want to see persons, once they call for national duty, they're supported by the establishment, whether private or public. They should not lose any remuneration. If they're injured on the job, then there's some insurance should be able to be in place to take care of these persons. We still do not have that. So even though we continue to make an appeal for volunteers, we train every year volunteers. when they come out to serve, they are not supported wholeheartedly, and we continue to lose. Just how we train and we track, we continue to lose a number of volunteers, critical volunteers too. So the government, both federal and local, has to show some guts and put some of these legislation in place. We've been kicking the ball along the road for too long. Even the response and rehabilitation to after a major impact, we still do not have any formal procedure to say, well, this is the plan to get the country back to normalcy. That is not documented. So these are some challenges we face at the disaster management. We continue to make recommendations year in, year out, but I said the uptake and response from the legislative and policy directive is slow. So we have made some strides, yes, but based on the how we are investing in technology and the movement, there's a lag between the development and the policy to support the development and the requirement for these developments.
Let's hope Melissa open their eyes and their hearts and their ears and everything, and they get a new perspective on the whole thing. Now, a number of good Samaritans and friendly governments have been donating to the Jamaican government and the Jamaican people, but according to Prime Minister Holness, it is not nearly enough. It is going to take billions to get Jamaica back to the level of normalcy that they had become accustomed to. If that was Nevis, where or to whom could we have turned for that kind of financial assistance?
Just so Jamaica has reached out to the diaspora for assistance, the Federation would do the same. Ironically, when I joined the disaster management back in 2010, I attended a mitigation council meeting on St. Kitts, and I proposed to the meeting. It was chaired by the Deputy Prime Minister at the time. I wouldn't call any names, but when I proposed that 1% of the VAT receipts be used as a pool for risk reduction, I was laughed at, but I guess they couldn't see any further than their nose. Now 15 years later, we still do not have a dedicated fund with regards to risk reduction, But these are some initiatives that could have been taken to cushion the blow if we are impacted severely, rather than taking loans and going on and begging. At least we should have had some fund set aside for risk reduction that could be leveraged with the donors. So if we are impacted, there's a 3-tier impact. Level 1 means you have the resources within your country that you can respond to the situation. That's for level 1 hurricane, category 1 and 2. Level 2 impact means you have some resources, but you may need specialized assistance in 1 or 2 of the areas. But level 3 impact, like Jamaica, when the entire country is devastated, or parts of the country is severely devastated, and they have lost 30% of the GDP in 3 days. There's no turning back from that. You would have to make several appeals for several years to get yourself back together. We have seen a lot of the Caribbean countries have sent delegations to Jamaica to assist with the electrical, the utility, whether it's water and electricity. But there's a major issue with regards to the debris. Where are they going to put that? Are they going to recycle it? So these are opportunities to come on stream, but it is a problem, and we will see secondary disasters occurring because you'll have now widespread diseases as secondary impacts. So it's very tricky, and financing, there are some United Nations and Green Climate funding available, but it is not enough. The Criff Insurance, they gave Jamaica $121 million, and that's less than 3% of what is required to put them back together, you know. So it's a difficult sell.
Okay. In circumstances like these, and I mean the amount of damages as we saw in Jamaica, what role does the regional disaster unit plays in terms of financing? We know that they assist with hurricane items such as equipment, material, food, water, etc. But in terms of financial assistance, with the rebuilding of homes, schools, hospitals, ports, etc., what role does the regional unit play?
The regional unit is mainly a coordinating unit. So we have access to a lot of the United Nations entities that are part of what we call the CDPG meeting, or the Caribbean Development Partners Group meeting. We have all the United Nations agencies. We have the militaries from our, the British, UK, the French, Canadian, US military are part of this meeting. But in terms of financing, we have some funding agencies like the UK Dept and Canadian government, etc. But it's not a major fund, it's just to...
So it's like a go-between?
Yeah, just to...
They reach out to other bodies?
And coordinate and see who could come on board to assist, But there's no big pool of funds
put down there for hurricane.
That's not that. No.
That's what I wanted to get. Now, when a country suffers such damages, whether it's through an earthquake or hurricane or some other freak storm, priority is normally given to some areas in the rebuilding process. If this destruction was in Nevis, which areas would have been given top priority to get us back up and running as quickly as possible? And I keep using Nevis in relevance to Jamaica just so we could find out what we do in situations like what happened in Jamaica.
Right. As I said previously, there's no procedure for getting the country back together that is documented. But here we practice getting NEVLEC, or the electricity department, up first and foremost. Because everything is tied to NEVLEC.
Right.
The water services, the economy in the businesses, etc. Everything depends on NEVLEC.
Electricity.
So the impetus is to get NEVLEC up and running. That's our practice procedure here on the island. It is not documented.
Right.
We would like to see a document
outlining
all this. But in general practice, we work with NEVLEC to get them up and running, and then everyone else would now be a part of the recovery process. But NEVLEC is priority.
Yeah. Once you get the current back, which areas you go to after that?
The first thing is to get this Charleston district on, ensure that power goes to the hospital.
Right.
Even though they have 2 generators that function that could last for weeks, we still try to ensure that main power goes to the hospital and the business district. Right. From then you could branch off based on the minimum damage.
Right. Okay. Now in terms of damages to property, every person who suffers damages would have been seeking assistance with the rebuilding of their homes. How do you go about deciding who gets priority and what is the person will be required to do in order to get that assistance?
Right. After an impact, category 5 impact, you will have persons who will be homeless. They lose their homes.
Right.
There are some homes may be partially damaged. The disaster management, through its mechanism, we would conduct what we call a damage assessment needs analysis. And this is to look at the individual family to see what is required. Right. So if a home is required, what else in the home is needed? Because the needs of the female is different to the needs of the male.
Right.
The needs of the elderly is different to the needs of the children. So we do a complete assessment of the individual or the individual families, and then we prioritize the assistance as required.
Okay. So Mr. Big can rush in and say, listen,
No. We have done in the past. We assisted some persons, like in 2017 after Hurricane Irma and Maria. We did, after our damage and needs assessment, we recognized that some homes that are single-headed female households, those receive priority treatment. Okay. We even went as far as to repair 2 homes before the persons left the shelters to go back into the their homes. Those homes were repaired by the Public Works Department and Social Services.
Okay.
Yes.
That's good. That's good. Now, one of the things that we saw happening during and after the Hurricane Melissa was some serious flooding from rain, flooding from the sea, and in case of Jamaica, flooding from rivers as well. We have several large guts here on the island of Nevis, but we have never really experienced a storm of this magnitude. Right? Hurricane Melissa has caused us all to take a second look at our capabilities when it comes to preparing our island against real heavy flooding. Apart from getting persons to a higher location, what else can we do to protect lives and property from heavy flooding?
Flooding, as I mentioned, we have a few areas around the island that are prone to flooding. We usually appeal to these areas once we recognize that we have significant amount of rainfall. Sometimes we have had in the past to remove family members from alongside guts. Right, so that's an option, to remove the family and put them in shelters, or have them move in with their family members in different areas. With regards to the drainage issue, we have several of our guts crossing the road, the Island Main Road. Some of these culverts are large. However, in extreme rainfall, these would be overwhelmed, and we expect to see some damage along the Island Main Road. So again, we will have to do an assessment after the water have receded. We would appeal to persons to remain at home and refrain from using the Island Main Road, because we may have compromising of the Island Main Road, that person may fall in holes or may even be swept away. So we do a robust appeal to have person remain at home and refrain from utilizing the Island Main Road until a proper assessment will be done. With regards to heavy equipment, sometimes we would have equipment posted around the island. Through the Public Works Department, there are contractual arrangement with some of the heavy equipment operators, so we rely on them to move around after the outlay is given, and they will start patching work, just to ensure that the roads are passable. So these are some strategies that we have implemented here in Nevis.
I notice you focus heavily on roads being flooded, but with a Category 5, I'm sure that other areas inside, apart from the roads, will be heavily flooded as well. How much of a flooding could we take? I know you didn't do a proper assessment, but suppose we have to get a Cat 5 with real rains like Jamaica did. How much could we take here in Nevis?
We will be devastated.
Okay.
Yes, we have guts and they're deep and stuff, but the culverts going on the road, they have been there since the early 60s, etc. So the capacity would be overwhelmed. Especially the Caysby area.
Right.
Those culverts are very small. 4 inches of rain, 5 inches of rain, you see those over top. The situation at Bath got back in 2011 when we had flooding on the southern part of the island. We had the gut that on the bridge at Water Department, Stony Grove, that got over top. The bridge at the high school was over top, and the bridge in Lower Bath by the New Testament Church, that was over top. Since then, Disaster Management has partnered with the Japan Embassy, the grassroots program. We got some funds and we built the road and by the Girl Guides, the road and bridge. So the bridge that bridge was constructed higher than the other three. So at least we will have some access to the hospital in the event of another rain event. But having 4 feet of rainfall, in a short period of time, that's crazy, The impact will be devastating. Yeah.
All right. Now, after Hurricane Melissa would have passed, we also saw several businesses being ransacked and looted by persons in Jamaica who were desperate for food, water, and anything else to help them survive the aftermath of the storm. And one could understand and sympathize with their plight. But if a similar situation presents itself here in Nevis, how do you suggest that such situation be dealt with?
Having looting after storm is difficult to control. We can implement curfews as far as practicable, but when human nature is in need, and especially if the distribution of supplies is delayed for any reason, persons would have to find alternate methods to get. It's just survival of the fittest. So, person would loot. All right. We have a small police force and defense force. Those persons will be out on the streets, monitoring and keeping criminal activity at minimum. But if a community is cut off with one shop and a person is hungry, it's difficult to see how that person would not be impacted by looting.
That's true.
But we would make an appeal as far as practicable to ensure that persons, behave civil as far as practicable. But if a man is hungry and he got to feed his family, and it's difficult to stop that kind of activity.
True. Now, just like in Jamaica, most of our tourism development are along the coastline. We saw Hurricane Lenny and Hurricane Omar practically brought our economy to a standstill in 1999 and 2008, and they were not nearly as devastating as Hurricane Melissa. The experts are warning us that the climate change is real and that those types of hurricanes will become more frequent and more devastating in the future. Is there anything that can be done to our existing coastline to protect what's already there? Can we do anything to protect what's there before anything approaches us?
That's a difficult question. We have our major hotel on the coast.
Right.
We have our major restaurants at the development area in the Pennies area. That area is prone to storm surge.
Yes.
And the Four Seasons Hotel is also on the coastline and is usually impacted by storm surge. They have done some remedial work in putting a rock fence or rock revetment at sea. But with 13-foot waves, I don't see the rock wall stopping a Cat 5. I don't see that happening. So there will be some severe impact, especially on the coastline. We have to start increasing the setbacks because we are losing the coastline from erosion on a general basis, and with storm surge we have lost the coral protection, so there's nothing at sea to break the waves, so we would be in for a rude awakening for Cat 5 and storm surge in excess of 10, anything above 10 feet storm surge would be problematic.
It could some reclaiming of lands form as a protection against that sort of thing, like filling going out, so that there's some sort of protection from that kind of devastation, because the way it is now, it will come straight up to TDC.
Yeah, but the problem is when you do land reclamation, you change the way of action. So
that is true. You're going somewhere else.
You would impact somewhere somewhere around the island. So it would have to be a holistic approach, and some studies would have to be done before you implement any remedial action.
And it will be costly.
It will be, yes.
Now, the coastline is a preferred area for hoteliers and villa developers because the seawater and sun is a major attraction to the type of visitors they are trying to attract. Any advice for those who may be thinking of such development near the coastline, across the region, not only here in Nevis, but across the region? Seeing what happened in Jamaica and that the storms are getting bigger and bigger. Any advice for those who are thinking of construction close to the coastline going forward?
But it's important that there be the laws of the land with regards to setbacks, and to have alternative measures of breaking the wave action. So planting of trees, putting rock revetment, encourage coral reef development, so you can have some breakwater methods in place to minimize the impact inland. But if you set back the facilities farther enough inland, you should be able to mitigate the impact of storm surge. We also have to look at the impact of tsunamis, which is another phenomenon that could reach far inland. So the impetus is to ensure that we have something to break the surf coming in. Yeah, break the surf coming in to minimize the action inland. Yes.
Okay. Folks, you're listening to Government at Work. My guest this evening is Mr. Brian Dyer. We shall take a short break, and when we return, we shall continue with our discussions here on Government at Work.
So right, St. Thomas is right, St. James is put together and build your land. Right, St. George's and St. Paul's together with St. John's. This land is enough for all to share. No reason to leave and go nowhere. Foreigners can come here from America and England. There is something mighty sweet about my land. And if the foreigners who live here can insist that it's here they're from, then I swear I'll never leave my native land. One people, one country.
Mr. Dyer, a number of persons normally volunteer their services every hurricane season, but what Hurricane Melissa has shown us is that a lot more volunteers may be needed. All hands on deck if we are to recover from such a disaster as quickly as possible. I am sure that thought would have crossed your mind as the Director of Disaster Preparedness here in Nevis. I'm equally certain that going forward your unit will be taking a second look at all aspects of its preparedness, including the command center. So talk to us a little about that, the efforts going forward after following what we saw Melissa did to Jamaica, that heavy Cat 5.
Yes, the Nevis Disaster Management, we have a robust public awareness campaign, and we continue to appeal to our volunteer base and persons in communities and businesses, as well as the faith-based organizations, to come on board and take part in the training activities. Currently, we have ongoing a 10-week training. We have gone around in each parish trying to attract persons. We are training persons in first aid, CPR, firefighting, search and rescue, psychological first aid, and how to relieve stress and trauma, and in disaster management. And we have completed Charlestown, or St. Paul, St. Thomas, St. James. We are now in St. George, Gingerland. And we from St. George we go on to St. John's, the final leg. After this training, we would have a mass exercise, simulation exercise, with testing the skills and of the individuals who we have trained over the last 10 weeks. So this is where we are going. We understand that there are no legislation to support volunteerism, as I mentioned, but we still go out and encourage as much persons as possible to come on board, because there are many disciplines within the volunteer organization.
Right.
And we continue to train persons there's some persons from overseas who have come with training that they can impart as well. So we are maximizing the training opportunities, not only what we do locally, but when persons come from abroad with different training activities and skill set, we involve them in training activity. So we continue to encourage them as far as practicable to be a part of the pool. We have done some strengthening of the communications aspect at the disaster management. We are in possession of a Starlink system that we can have access to satellite technology for communications in the event all communications from the service providers, from the local service providers, goes down. We also have a big terminal that another satellite platform. We can send text message, make phone calls, internet service, and we recently acquired some additional equipment to separate the telephone system from the traditional government system, so we could be a standalone entity from the local service providers. So we are building redundancy. We have also recently installed repeaters on Saddle Hill and Round Hill. We have VHF repeaters and UHF repeaters both on Saddle Hill, Round Hill. We have an additional UHF repeater on Whitehall. So we bolster the communications around the island. We are installing communications in all of the community centers that we utilize as emergency shelters. So we'll be able, once we're in operation mode, we would have communications from the community centers to the emergency operations center. We have installed transfer switches in our community centers. So when an approach of a storm or any other catastrophe, we would have these generators installed at the emergency centers once we utilize these facilities as shelters. So, we maintain some sort of connectivity at these facilities. We have a pool of technical electricians that are part of the volunteer pool for disaster management, and they would be called in to assist in the installation of these generators. We have a contract, with based on the disaster management framework, we have the utility and transport. So we have a pool of truckers we can call upon, heavy equipment operators. We have also strengthened the response plan, but it still needs further strengthening based on the discussion with United Nations agencies. So it's a holistic approach that we are embarking upon to get the facility and the island prepared at all costs. We have recently gotten some additional equipment through a donation from the U.S. military, the U.S. Southcom, through their minimum cost project. We have received additional generators. We have received some tarpaulins, blankets, and some other items. So we continue to piecemeal enhance the product that we can offer to the general public. The volunteer pool continue to increase. We continue to attract young persons, elderly persons, retired persons. So it's a holistic approach going forward, and we trying to build on what we have in the past and enhance the loopholes and gaps that that were brought to the fore based on the assessment that was done back in 2022. And we continue to build on these areas and ensure that if we are impacted in the future, that we should be able to stand.
Okay. Now, after seeing what Hurricane Melissa did, are there any plans to perhaps increase the amount of shelters you have here in Nevis?
It is difficult. When I joined the department, we had 24 shelters, but some of these facilities were churches. We have since removed all schools and all churches from the shelter list, so we're down basically 10 facilities. Right? Manning shelters is another issue. If we do not have personnel to man these shelters, it doesn't make sense to operate a shelter. At a shelter, you need persons to register the shelteries. We have need for security. We have need for the feeding program. We have need for issuance of medications, communications. We need psychosocial support. We need cooks. The logistics of getting supplies to and from the shelters, that's another area that we need volunteers as well. So we are comfortable managing the 10. If we are overwhelmed with the 10, then we have to reach out to international agencies for providing additional shelter. Right? So, but we cannot have shelters occupied that we don't have enough manpower to man these.
Okay, understood. Let me ask you this. If necessary, would the unit consider areas in Sinkits as possible shelters and mandatory zones for persons that may have to be moved out of some of the areas that may in the path of incoming storms such as Melissa? Any consideration would be given to that?
Not necessarily, because if a category 5 is to impact Nevis, Sinkers would also be impacted, and vice versa.
I guess you have a point.
So, utilizing Sinkers as a shelter would not be feasible, because they would also be in need.
Okay. Now, we know that electrical poles normally gets knocked down during a storm. Do you think the time has come for the NIA to seriously look at running electrical lines underground rather than overhead going forward, especially with these storms getting bigger and bigger and bigger more often? What's your thought on that?
I think the time has come for us to put all our utilities underground. But it will be an expensive and costly venture. Some areas of the island do have the electricity supply underground. The water is underground. The utility in some areas for the telephone companies, that is also underground in some areas. So it's a good step in the right direction to have the entire island with all services underground. When that occurs, though, you will now have to look at the earthquake activity and the move and soil movement, etc.
You run from one, you boot up on the other.
Yeah, but it's a catch-22. But for storms and hurricanes, yes, it's important to have your supplies underground.
Now, as you are aware, some developers are looking at developing the south side of the island of Nevis, and you and I know that the south side normally gets the worst of the storm weather that comes our way. They are proposing to develop beaches in that area, marina in that area, hotel accommodation in that area. That area is normally rough without any storms passing through. Will the disaster preparedness unit be making any recommendations or suggestions to those developers regarding the possible weather conditions in the south?
The disaster management have met with the developers.
Okay.
We have had some discussions preliminary with regards to the hazard impact on the south coast. So discussions are ongoing. We promise to share our hazard mapping, because we have hazard maps for flooding, tsunamis, storm surge, the wind impact, volcano. So all of these will be shared with developers, so they can make informed decision with regards to the development.
Good.
We have done an assessment for each parish, and that area is barren. So we will have to now go and do another assessment once we see development in that area, so we can have that development covered and to see the impact, so we can do have preventative plans in place to mitigate the impact that they may incur on the south. And then we have also discussed the damage assessments that need to be done prior to any impact. So discussions are ongoing, and we expect to partner with these developments to ensure that we continue to maintain collaboration with all areas of the island and the development. Okay,
great. Sounds good. Now, you normally conduct training sessions each year for your staff and your volunteers. You mentioned it earlier, after destruction that we would have. Now, after destruction that we would have seen in Jamaica and the strength of the Hurricane Melissa, what effect it would have on your annual training sessions? Will there be any difference in your training sessions based on what we saw in Jamaica? Because, that's a different level we are talking about in terms of destruction and storm category.
Well, once we have that kind of level of destruction on the island,
before it happens.
Before it
happens, your training sessions, would it be different now that you would have seen what Melissa would have done in Jamaica?
Well, we have a long list of training activities that we would like to roll out in 2026.
Okay.
But, we have seen a reduction in the funding from the Nevis Administration with regards to the fiscal management. We have had to reach out to external agencies to support the training program for 2025, and again we will do so for 2026. So I am to submit to one of our friendly donors the work program for 2026. I am to do that by the end of November, so they can have internal discussions and see how best they can assist us for 2026. Because we usually start our training program in March every year and goes right down to December. Some of our facilitators are from across the region, some from in the US and elsewhere. And generally training is not done in the month of September because it is traditionally considered the peak. But we run our training program from March right down to December, with the exception of September. So we would continue. We have already outlined what we like to do. We just package it now and present it to friendly agencies to see how they would assist us. But we have decided to increase the training areas.
Okay, great. Now, no amount of preparation is ever enough for such a storm, and no amount of equipment is ever enough either. But I'm sure that you'll want to double and triple your hurricane equipment as quickly as possible after what we just witnessed in Jamaica, Cuba, and other countries that were hit by Hurricane Melissa. Are there any plans afoot to perhaps approach a regional and international organization for assistance with additional hurricane equipment and materials for the island of Nevis, rather than waiting until some damage is done to us?
Well, we just received a small quantity of equipment from the U.S. Southcom military, the minimum cost project. We have also, I just mentioned the equipment that we receive to bolster the communications, etc. We would reach out in early in 2026 to bolster the relief supplies. Things like the hygiene kits, we are deficient in these areas, as the kits that we have now is for the entire family. We need, based on the gender, we need to have hygiene kits for men, we need to have hygiene kits for female. Currently we have hygiene kits with female supplies, so if you're impacted now, we will have to give a male a female hygiene kit, which is not appropriate. So we have to invest in getting some hygiene kits for men and for women. We need to get some more cots. Even though we encourage persons to bring blankets to the emergency shelters, having a cot is more comfortable. So we need to invest more in those. And blankets, these are some critical areas. Chainsaws, we need to improve the number of chainsaws, and we are trying to get some additional generators so we can provide not only for the emergency shelters but also the critical facilities around the island, so we can have those maintained as soon as practical after the impact. So yeah, we're working on getting things in place.
Okay, sounds good. By the way, let me ask you this. Did you, in your capacity as director of the disaster preparedness here in Nevis, attend any regional or international discussions regarding the destruction or the rebuilding of those countries that was hit by Hurricane Melissa, Jamaica in particular?
Yes, I did attend one of the online meetings as part of what we call the CDPG, the Caribbean Development Partners Group. This group meets. We started meeting in the mornings. Previously, we met at 1 p.m. every day once we have an approaching hurricane in the region. For Melissa, we met at 11 a.m., daily, to scenario planning and to look at the possible destruction and areas that persons could assist. So, yes, the information gathered during the discussion, eye-openers. We look at the forward planning, how we can get assistance, but once the damage is done, the damage is done. So sometimes you have to change what the game plan is. The need for rapid assessment that is now being done by satellites rather than the going around, you know, because there's 1.5 million persons were impacted. So going around on foot to see what is damaged and the needs, you know, would take an incredibly long time. So satellite technology was used to determine the level of destruction. And then we start now going around looking at the needs, the individual needs of the family and person in shelters. So that is something that, you know, we have benefited from the use of technology in the assessments.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now, a number of Caribbean leaders have visited Jamaica to see firsthand the damage that was done. Have you had the chance to visit Jamaica or any of those countries that was hit by Hurricane Melissa since the storm passed?
No, I have not. No.
Do you have any plans to visit to see firsthand the damage that was done, or even to see how they are going about rebuilding?
No, but St. Nevis has a contingent of utility workers there assisting in the restoration. So
yes,
I guess
they
will bring back some stories for us. I've had persons who I've met at previous occasions. They have been to Jamaica and doing the assessments. One of my former colleagues, he is now also a part of the Red Cross in Jamaica, and I saw him on television talking about, you know, preparing the country. That was before the impact.
Okay, before the impact.
And how they were going around house to house and distribution of, you know, supplies and etc. etc. So it was good to see him in action. You know, we haven't spoken for quite some time.
Have you seen him since the storm?
No, I've not seen him.
You sure he's okay?
He should be okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but I know he's overwhelmed.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Now the federal government donated $100,000 to the government and people of Jamaica, and as you mentioned earlier, some electricians from Nevis and Scarborough has been sent to assist with the recovery process. But do you know if any other assistance has been given in terms of sending other volunteers to assist in the rebuilding process?
I'm aware that there's some discussion, if needs be, to have persons from the psychosocial departments here on the island to travel to Jamaica to render assistance. Outside of that, I'm not aware of any other assistance. We have been approached by several private persons and organizations here on the island to find out if we will be sending anything, any relief supplies, food and clothing, etc. But that would not be done from the disaster management end. With the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, there's an MOU with Tropical Shipping. So the 20 CDMA participating states can send relief items utilizing Tropical Shipping. But unfortunately, Tropical Shipping does not serve Jamaica, so we couldn't utilize that mode or memorandum of understanding with Tropical. So that is one of the reasons why the government offered to send cash to see how far that can spread, rather than having the general population provide any items for shipment. You know, we in the past we have assisted Dominica. We send supplies to Dominica. We send supplies to St. Vincent. We send supplies to Anguilla. You know, but because there's no shipping agreement with Tropical in Jamaica, we couldn't utilize that mode or method.
Okay. We have a number of Jamaicans living among us here on the island of Nevis. Have there been any reach out to them, or have they reached out to you in any way?
Yes, that's one of the associations that have contacted us, but we could not accept any relief items because we don't know how the mode of getting the items there. Okay. So we did not accept any supplies. Okay,
understood. Now, how has Hurricane Melissa changed your outlook on hurricane disasters, hurricane preparedness, or the dangers of a hurricane of such magnitude? How does that change your outlook on on that those disasters?
Hurricanes are an interesting phenomenon. You know, each one comes with its own unique characteristics. For me, what was troubling was the speed at which Melissa traveled.
It was very slow.
Very slow. And then the rapid intensification before it made impact. that was troubling for me and worrisome. And then when I saw the rainfall predicted was over 36 inches, that's 3 feet, within 2 days, it was something to behold, because after the soil is saturated and you have an additional 36 inches of rainfall, I didn't expect to see much trees standing.
True.
The utility poles, because the soil was so saturated, and then you have 185 miles an hour wind. I didn't expect to see much standing. So, the area that is impacted, yes, it will be a war zone. Yeah.
At least they were lucky that Kingston didn't much damage. That helping a little bit. Now, I have often wondered if the building that the unit currently use, your disaster preparedness unit, uses as its headquarters in Long Point, could withstand a major hurricane. Do you think that it can? Because I pass and I look at it on several occasions, and I shudder to think what would happen if even a tree passed through that area. Category 3 hurricane passed through that area. How confident are you that that area will still be standing?
Well, the facility was designed by the U.S. Naval facilities. It was designed to withstand a major earthquake and a major hurricane. Cat 5, I'm not so certain, but I saw the construction of the EOC. It has cables in the roof that the facility could warp and then regulate itself. I'm not certain of Category 5, 185 miles an hour sustained with 200 miles an hour wind, if that facility was done. During the emergency operations for Hurricane Maria, we had some leaking because the wind-blown rain was not perpendicular, it was horizontal. So
they came under the...
Yeah, we had some seepage. So I'm not certain if the facility would survive, but we have some alternative facilities that we would look to run to in the event the facility is destroyed.
Oh, because that was my next question. I mean, in light of what just happened in Jamaica with those shelters, has the unit given any consideration towards looking at a backup plan, at least a different place to store all of your hurricane supplies and equipment that you have? Because the last thing you would want is for the unit to be in a situation where a storm passes and it cannot help anybody, because everything that was stored has been blown away or washed away. So you're saying there's an alternate...
we have in our planning processes a place to move the emergency operations center. But with regards to hosting the supplies, we do not have any alternate warehousing facility on the island. So the distribution would have to be done on arrival. Once we clear the customs procedures, port procedures, then we will have to go straight into distribution to the impacted areas. If once our warehouse is impacted, then we'll have to do direct distribution. Where we can get 40-foot containers, we may have to request some of those for storage, but it would be important to get the supplies distributed as soon as practicable.
True. Now, I'm a little concerned about the statement you made earlier with regards to the legislation. We need some beef in the system to back up a number of things that you mentioned, and I agree with you. We need. I am hoping that Melissa would have at least raised enough concerns towards that legislation part that you spoke of. How do you go about? I know you have tried on several occasions, but I think Melissa should be of some assistance to you in that effort. And are there any plans to attack it a second time? Going to the powers that be to enforce legislation on some of these things, because you, especially the volunteer part that you spoke of, where they're not really covered in any way. Things like that need to be put in place. So is there any plan afoot to, after having seen Melissa, to go at it another time seriously and try to convince the powers that be that, listen, there's a serious need to get certain things here legislated so that we got some beef to it, We're just not going ad hoc in doing things. Some structure is in place and some backup is behind there for persons volunteering and for things that we need to do properly with regards to our disaster preparedness.
The United Nations Disaster for Risk Reduction, they have published some preliminary findings for the impact of Melissa. And from those preliminary findings, the World Bank is also on the ground in Jamaica. And they'll be putting together a lessons learned and fact sheet.
Right.
So those will be sent to all the countries around the world.
Right.
The initial fact-finding mission is being discussed at COP 30, and it is hoped that we would see some improvement in the risk reduction around the world, because the impact of climate change and we're not gonna see anything less than category 5 frequenting the shores of our islands going forward. So we must put things in place and get our house in order, because climate change, the phenomena we have seen, we have had 13 named storms for this hurricane season.
Right.
Of the 13, we had 5 hurricanes, and 4 of the 5 were major hurricanes.
Wow.
So I don't think we would be seeing anything less than that going forward. The major hurricanes would be increasing. So the government of the day need to put things in place. The theme for this year's disaster risk reduction was fund resilience, not disasters. But we have not had any impetus to set aside any funding. Yes, we have our consolidated fund. We could say X amount is geared for emergency response. But I would like to see a fund dedicated to risk reduction and risk reduction activities. But that is not in place in the Federation. So we need legislation first of all, and then we need funding to support the actions of risk reduction.
Right. Fortunately for us, we are only a little over 13,000 people, so we should be facing that those difficulties like Jamaica, the 1 point something million or something like that has been affected. So we let's keep hope alive that they keep passing Nevis, because we have been very lucky for the past 100 years, so to speak. We got a little touch from Hurricane Hugo and so forth. He was the full thing, just a little touch, and we saw what damage it did to us. So we got to keep praying that these hurricanes pass us to the left or pass us to the right, swing off us, because we really can't take that kind of hit that Jamaica got. Nevis will be flattened with a 5.
Yeah,
totally flattened.
Well, we are seeing Dominica, who got hit
twice actually.
2015, 2017,
And they got 1979 Hurricane David.
Yeah. So, and then Jamaica, we have seen Bahamas. It's only a matter of time, then our turn will come again.
I hope it doesn't come in my lifetime, I'm telling you.
I hope so too, but we got to prepare for it,
Yes.
So we are laying the groundwork, and we hope that whoever comes after I leave would build on the progress that we are making, But it's not an easy part. We have to invest in academia as well. A lot of research. There are a lot of papers around about disaster financing, about the impact of of climate change, etc. We have to pay special attention to these research papers and help them to shape our policy and also the development going forward.
You see, one of the things I like to see, I hope that we see going forward, is that more effort is made in preparations prior to, because we seek assistance after we are damaged and people, donate and so forth. But I would like to see more done prior to, so that when it hits, we have something to, I would like to see a lot more effort in that, that the region in a whole sets up in a way where, we could be comfortable knowing that, boy, if we get a little hit here, there's a little something there, that we could think on, rather than having to go towards that. But we can see. One more question to you before we close off. You mentioned earlier that you have a number of equipment and material that you got lately, but all of those was before Melissa. We saw Melissa. So now that we see Melissa, do you think you have enough right now for us here in Nevis, or there's still a need for much more?
There's still a need for much more. We have a very small quantity of tarpaulins. What we did in the recent shipment, back in 2017, when we were visited by the UK Dept, the Development Fund, they recognized that the houses on Nevis are significantly bigger than the average house around the region. So I was advised that we should invest in larger tarpaulins.
Good.
So we have a small quantity of 20 by 20 tarpaulins. We have a small quantity of 20 by 40, and we recently acquired 40 by 40 tarpaulin. It's still a small quantity.
Yes.
We still less than 3,000 in quantities of tarpaulin. So the population is 13,000. I'm assuming we may have like 8,000 homes. So we need to significantly increase the quantity of our tarpaulins, especially. The hygiene kits, I mentioned those, blankets, cots. We need to significantly ramp up these quantities, because once your home is devastated, it is devastated. We have to ensure that persons are treated with dignity in our shelters, whether it's in public shelter or private shelter. We must ensure that they are treated with dignity.
Okay. One of the things you may need to ramp up to is your public awareness program, especially after Melissa, because people need to know what could happen in stuff like this. So
yes, we have a plan to increase the public awareness and also to address the need for addressing trauma, because with the wind speed that's experienced in Jamaica, a lot of the children are traumatized. They are even afraid of rainfall. So there's a lot of work for the psychologists or counselors to treat the traumatic experiences of these children.
Should we be discussing that in the schools ahead of time, now that we have the experience of what happened in Jamaica? Maybe something
we're fortunately we ran a training for addressing trauma and stress in October, the last week of October, just before.
At the center or in the schools?
At the center. Okay. We had the guidance counselors in the schools.
Okay.
So, I think we're equipped.
Okay.
Yeah, so the pool that we have, they're equipped, because we ran 2 of these training opportunities for the year.
Okay.
And we are looking to go more in depth for 2026.
Okay.
Right, so, we are preparing for the worst.
Right. Yeah. Let me keep praying as well.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Dyer, I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us this evening, and for us to look at the hurricane preparedness and what happened in Jamaica and so forth. It's always a pleasure having you, and we normally come twice a year in June or in September to discuss these hurricanes, but because of Melissa, we might have to come a little more often in preparation. So your final words for our listening and viewing audience.
It's a pleasure being here to impart information to the general public. I want to appeal to the general public as well that we are a couple of days to the end of the hurricane season. We have seen some storms develop in December and traverse into the January, so we want persons to be on the alert at all times. We have seen an uptick in earthquake activity to the east of Guadeloupe. There are well over 100 earthquakes in the last month, so we want persons to be aware of that as well. We have a long list of hazards that can impact the country at any one time, so persons should be vigilant and be in a state of preparedness to act once the notice comes. So again, thank you very much for the support for the department over the entire 2025. And as we close out the year, we continue to be vigilant, but we still want persons to ensure that they are prepared to act at any time. So thank you again for your support, and we look forward. We have training coming up in St. John's Parish, not this week, the following week, next week. So anyone who wants to be trained in first aid, CPR, disaster management, fire safety, search and rescue, you're willing to join us at the Panel Community Center. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dyer. Folks, that's it for this evening's program. Join us again next week when we shall do it all over again. Do enjoy the rest of the evening's programming, then have a pleasant night's rest. Good night.